She Shed Comedy with Linda Schwartz, empowering your comedy career.
Hey everybody, welcome back to She Shed Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Schwartz. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at sheshedcomedy.com. Today we're talking to Holley Mignosi. As a speaker, trainer, body language expert, and story influencer, Holley helps speakers and experts craft their signature story and add captivating body language so that they can double their income, their influence, and their impact on all of life's stages. It's episode number 20. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to She Shed Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Schwartz, and today I'm with Holley Mignosi. Did I say that correctly?
You did. Woo!
Yay! I was working on my Italian earlier. Mignosi.
That's right. Got to use the hands. Helps it.
And today we're talking about storytelling, performance, how your words and body should be in congruency when you're up there on the stage or when you're performing. So welcome, Holley. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled.
Let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you help people?
Well, what I do right now, I'm a speaking coach, and I specialize in storytelling and body language. And I help female experts, entrepreneurs, any woman that wants to take the stage. And there's lots of different forms of stage, right? So it could be a podcast, a webinar, it could be storytelling actually on stage, could be one-to-one. But any woman that really wants to master using her story, what she's been through, to connect with her audience in a deeper level and to share her gifts and talents and even character, like the things that she's become from growing through these challenges. And then we enhance it with some really fun body language, which is just so fun and playful. Got to have fun, right?
Absolutely.
So we enhance it with body language so the message is congruent, because sometimes our mouth is saying one thing, but our body might be revealing something else. Like if we're a little nervous, or if we're a little anxious, or if we're telling our audience, hey, come work with me, but you're a little hesitant, your body language might be saying something different, and the audience is picking up on it, even though the speaker is completely unaware of it.
This is really, really fascinating to me because as you know, we've had, some previous conversations. I'm a stand-up comedian and I've been really called to public speaking as well. However, I feel like I'm still in the beginning stages of getting up there and finding my voice and all of that. But I wonder, this is so fascinating to me. And I wonder how you got started in this. Like, can you share a little bit about your story and how you came to know that this work was your calling and your path?
I love that you say calling, because that's really what I feel like it is. And I did not know that this was my quote unquote calling when I was younger. When I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be someone who helped others. I love hair and makeup and making women feel good about themselves. So I thought I was going to be a salon owner. I thought I was going to own a salon. And then the third thing I wanted to be was a mermaid. So, I just wanted to be free and play and feel good and make everyone else feel good. And so that if that gives you any kind of indication of some of who I was when I was young, I thought, okay, how can I wrap all this into one job, one career? And when I was 7, I had my first introduction to stage. It was my first job in fashion. My first show was with Macy's. And that's because my sister is 10 years older and she worked for Macy's and they had a show and they were like, well, we need one more girl. Who knows someone that we could throw up there? And my big sister is really confident and outgoing. And I was kind of shy and introverted. And my sister said, oh yeah, let's throw Holley up there. It'll be fun. And I was terrified. It was fun after I got down. I loved wearing the clothes, but I had no experience or training. So my first introduction to stage was actually, I was quite scared. But any good parent, my parents were like, okay, keep going, don't give up. And I had an affinity. I wanted to be in the fashion industry, and I did like stage, but I didn't quite know how that was really going to turn out. And I actually, after high school, studied cosmetology, and I got my license in hair and makeup. I was emceeing some fashion shows. I was modeling in some fashion shows. And then when I wasn't doing the modeling or doing the hair and makeup, I was teaching runway, image, style to aspiring models and actors. And then I actually had an opportunity to own my own modeling and acting agency. So I got to book them for jobs. And it was really fun. And I felt really great about myself. I thought I found my niche. It was like, oh, this is perfect. I feel like I'm in my zone. Until one day, I realized I wasn't in my zone. And it was kind of like you could say there was an ugly side to the beauty industry. And that was that I really didn't fit the typical look for a model. I was only 5'8", not 5'9", 5'10", or 5'11". I was a size 6, not a size 5 or 4 or 3. And my hips were really more athletic build, a little more curvaceous. I didn't have the long, thin, willowy structure of a quote unquote typical model. And I found myself trying to diet and run and exercise and do anything I could to get a couple of extra inches off my hips, even though I was only 21, 22, 23 years old. And I was certainly healthy, but I never really felt confident about my body because the industry said I wasn't perfect. I didn't fit in. I didn't match. And I'll never forget, my boss grabbed all the runway instructors together and he said, you need to be a role model of the highest industry standard. And if you're not, you need to change it. And he took out a measuring tape and he measured our bust, our waist, and our hips. Now, in his defense, measuring your body is not uncommon in the modeling and acting industry because the clothes are pre-made and they want to make sure they fit you. But this wasn't for a job. This wasn't for a particular runway show. This was specifically him saying, if you don't fit this, you don't have value.
Wow.
And all the other girls fit the physical dimensions to a T, except me. And when my hips were measured as being several inches too big, I was publicly humiliated in front of my peers. And he actually, I call it tisking. He tisked me like that. And he shook his head and said, this is unacceptable. All of us need to be XYZ, ABC. We need to fit into this model of perfection. And that was my first big hit that I was not okay. I was harshly judged and that I needed to find a way to change who I was for love and acceptance. And it wasn't long before somebody at a party gave me a little bag of some white powder. And said, hey, try this. And she was right. It worked. She said, you don't even have to snort it. You can just put it in your drink like, Crystal Light, girlfriend. It'll be so easy.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'll do anything to fit in and not feel the pain of that rejection. Not that I set out to be so thin or so skinny or to even use drugs. I just wanted love and acceptance. So I used it. And it worked. She was right, like a charm. Within just a few weeks and months, I was exactly in the dimensions that I needed to be to quote unquote fit in to the model industry. And inside, I felt like a fraud. Even though I got the love and acceptance on the outside, when I looked in the mirror, it was like, if I quit this, I'll lose everything.
Right. Yeah.
But inside, I had headaches, heart palpitations, sleepless nights. I was nervous, agitated, irritated, impatient. I was becoming ugly on the inside. And I tried to quit over several years, on and off and on and off. But I always swung back into it because of my internal need to be accepted and the external message that I was getting that I was not accepted. And then eventually, I met someone. I moved to San Diego and I met someone and we got married and I got pregnant. Now, the good news is I was able to quit while I was pregnant, which I was very proud of. But by the time she was 2 years old, I realized I was not in a healthy marriage. I was not happy. He was not happy. We were not a good fit. And by the time she was 3, we were avoiding our problems by diving into drugs together on the weekends. So then he and I started using together. The good news is we had a live-in nanny who would stay with our daughter while we were out being extremely irresponsible and partying all night. But the bad news was we had a live-in nanny who would stay with our daughter. And I wasn't a present mom.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day that I came home with him after partying all weekend. And it was about 6 a.m. And I was still in I call them stripper shoes. I was still in my platform heels and my little.
We've all had those moments.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Girl, I know too much. What you talking about? I've been there myself.
Yep. So I'm coming home at 6 a.m., doing the walk of shame in my little stripper heels and my little skirt. And I was so tired, where your shoulders are hunched over and that spaghetti strap is falling off. I was a mess. All I wanted to do was go to sleep. And I walked through the door, and there was our little blonde-haired, blue-eyed ball of joy greeting us at the door. And she looked up and said, "Hi, Mommy and Daddy. Where were you? Come play with me." And I looked at him, and he was like, "I'm going to bed." And I knew he was going off to our bedroom to smoke some pot and fall asleep. And I looked at her, and the guilt was like, oh, and it hit my heart. And I said, "Okay, I'll play with you." And we sat down, and we had a little tea set, we were sipping tea, and she was so precious in her little tutu. It was pink and had little roses all over it. And then I actually got thirsty. So I got up and I went to the kitchen to get a drink. And when I came back, she was gone. So I was like, okay, where'd she go? And I looked in her bedroom and she wasn't there. And then I looked in her bathroom and she wasn't there. And I looked at our bedroom door, which was cracked just a few inches. And I just had this sinking feeling in my stomach. And I opened the door. And as I opened the door, there she was in the middle of our room with our bag of drugs in one hand and the pipe and the lighter in the other hand. And my husband was asleep. And apparently he had left, a bag of marijuana and whatever next to him, and she had found it.
Wow.
And it was like an instant moment where all of these things flashed into my mind at one time. What are you doing? You're ruining your life. You're ruining your daughter's life. How did you get here? And it was this instant divine download. And I looked at him and I heard this voice say, "You can't expect him to change. It's got to start with you."
Wow.
And that's when I knew, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how. Help. And I rushed to my daughter and I grabbed the drugs and the lighter out of her hand and checked her mouth. She hadn't ingested anything. She was safe. I said some prayers, thank you, God.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a decision right then and there that my life had to change, even though I had no idea how to do it. And I just knew that the pain of losing her or endangering her was just too great. So I made the choice to get rid of the drugs then and there. I knew I was going to have to leave the relationship, but I didn't know how. And I knew I was going to have to leave my work. I was going to have to leave the industry. Because even though I had an internal problem, which is the deep need for love and connection, I had an external problem.
Yeah.
The environment wasn't going to let me quit and feel good about myself. So I had to leave everything all at once. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to start working out. And my weekends were filled with reading books on health and nutrition, psychology, hypnosis, NLP, anything I could get my hands on to figure out how to change my mindset, how to handle the cravings. Every time I had a craving for drugs, I just went for a run. I worked out. I knew I had to change my physicality in order to change how I felt. And little by little, things started to get a little bit easier. And then I took the big steps and we divorced. And then I took another big step and I left the industry and I hired a trainer. So I feel like it's really important when we make these big shifts in our life that we find someone who's at least a couple steps ahead of us so they can really impart some wisdom and knowledge and hold us to a higher standard and give us a different paradigm shift, a different way of looking at ourselves and our life. And I hired a personal trainer. And before long, we started dating. And then he said, "You're kind of good at this. Why don't you become a trainer too?" So I got my training certificate. And within a few months, I had 6 different certifications in fitness and personal training and yoga and Zumba and Pilates and all those kind of things. And we opened up a personal training studio together. And finally, I felt like, oh my gosh, I get to use all these things that I've learned about stage, confidence, charisma, self-love, and I get to use it in an environment where I get to be me. And I get to be a woman who's fully expressed in her God-given gifts and talents. And however I show up as the best version of me, that's what's expected of me. And finally, I felt like, oh, I found my home. And I had a wonderful experience with my husband. We're married by now, actually. We got married. So we were actually working together, and then we married, and we've had our fitness business for over a decade. And it's been incredible to be able to help women find that self-love, feel comfortable in their skin, no matter what shape that takes, to be healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally and spiritually. And that's really been the core of what I've been doing. And I thought, okay, I got to a certain phase, and maybe you experienced this too in your career, and maybe many women out there listening have felt this. You get to a certain phase of expertise where you feel like, okay, I want to go bigger. I want to do more. I want to reach more people.
Yeah.
I love the one-on-one for the depth, but I want to go bigger. And I thought I was going to start speaking on stages about health and fitness. That's what I thought I was going to do. So I started training with some of the best fitness and speaking coaches. And as I started learning more about public speaking and combining it with what I learned from stage with modeling and acting, I realized, man, I just love speakers. People that are willing to go and show their story, their soul's journey, what they've been through, and really be vulnerable in a huge audience to show what life could be like if you are committed to transformation and making a change. And those people that are role models really inspire me. And that's how I shifted.
That's amazing. I feel like what you just shared really encapsulates everything that you're about. Beautiful storytelling, compelling storytelling, vulnerability. And you're so relatable in so many ways just through your story. So let's segue into that. Let's segue into the storytelling component. I want to come back to vulnerability because it's something that I wanted to ask you later on. But what elements of a story really makes a story compelling? Or can you talk a little bit about storytelling and what that means?
Yeah.
How do you see it?
Well, I feel like we all have a story. First of all, even if you're listening to this and you think, well, I haven't been through something that dramatic, or maybe you're thinking, oh yeah, boy, do I have a story. I've been through a lot, right? No matter where you are on the spectrum, you have life experiences where you were challenged, either with your physicality, your health, perhaps your wealth through money, or maybe relationships. So no matter what industry you're in, if you have had an experience where you felt like you were in what I call the pit, you were in a deep, dark place. It's also called the dark night of the soul, right? If you've been in a place where you didn't know how to get out of it, but you're still here, newsflash, you're successful.
Amen, sister.
So there's a story there. And so I really want to speak to those that feel like, I have a lot to tell. Where do I start? And to those that might think, well, I just have this little thing that happened. Don't discard the little things. There could be huge takeaways and lessons that you could offer your audience in even the little things that could be relatable. As far as like a structure, is that kind of what you're asking for? Like a little bit of like some elements, some structure?
Yes, I need structure in my life.
Yeah.
For me, the way that my brain works is if I can visualize the structure, then I can really fulfill on the end result of whatever it is that I'm doing. So I would love to hear what your structure is in terms of storytelling on this platform, as far as like public speaking and performing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it may be helpful if your listeners have a pen and paper. You could even draw this out if you're visual. Of course, if you're driving, don't do that, but, but it could be helpful. So one of the things that I use is the metaphor of a pit or a hole. So if you can imagine a line that goes from the left to the right, and then suddenly there's a drop off. It goes deep. And maybe it's a little shallow, maybe it's medium shallow, maybe it's really deep, right? And then there's a slow escalade where it starts to go up and up and up. And that's where your life took a shift, where you started to learn things, you started to implement some things, maybe a mentor came in and showed up for you, whether it was someone that you knew personally, a family member, someone online, or even in a book. And you started to implement some new things, and things started to shift and change, and they were on the upward swing. And then where you end on the far right is you're in a higher place than where you started. So you have these new learnings, these new inspirations, and these insights that you can share with other people. So at the very bottom of that dip, that pit, that's your low point. You can make a little line on a piece of paper and go, what was that moment where I was just in tears? Maybe you were crying, maybe you were by yourself, maybe you felt abandoned, whatever that is. What was that one moment? And for most people, they can actually pinpoint it to a single moment in time. Yeah. And you'll know it's that moment in time because you will probably be able to recall with great clarity what you saw, what you heard, what you felt, even what you smelled or what you tasted. So those are our senses. So there's a visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory way of explaining it. So I would include all of those things. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Either internally, I felt afraid when I saw my daughter with our drugs in her hands. I felt shame. I felt guilt. What have I done? What kind of mom am I? Who have I become? It was like I had an outer body experience where I looked at myself and was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so if you can explain all of those things from a visual, auditory, kinesthetic, what did you smell? What did you see? What did you taste? It gives the audience that feeling that they're in the story, which is really important. We call that transportation. They're transported into your story as if the story is theirs. They're seeing it through their eyes. So hopefully when I was explaining my daughter sitting there in her pink tutu with the little flowers on it, you could get a sense of that. You could visualize what that would be like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was painting a picture so that you could see it through my eyes, as opposed to just giving an account of what was happening like a journalist. Like it was October 22nd, 2005. The, wind chill factor was 8, whatever. So we don't want to be a reporter. We want to actually share what we're experiencing from all of our senses.
Yeah. And reliving that experience in a way. Yeah. For us, right?
Many times when I tell this story, I have to hold back some tears. I can feel the feeling in my heart. I can feel it in my stomach. And when we are with other people, that is conveyed through something called our mirror neurons. It's a part of our brain that actually lights up when someone is telling a story, or when we see someone doing something, our brain is interpreting it as if we're actually experiencing it as well. Scientists think that's how we learn. That's how the baby bird learns to catch the worm, by watching the mama bird catch the worm. Their mirror neurons interpret it as if they're experiencing it themselves. So another important part of your storytelling is this balance between feel the feelings so that your audience can really feel it, but not to the point where you're losing it, right? Because then you're up there and then it becomes therapy. And the stage is not the place for therapy, right? You're in command. You are a role model of someone who's already been to the other side of victory. So there's that beautiful balance between I let myself go back and feel the feelings, but not to the point where I'm losing it and my audience has to console me.
There has to be some sort of emotional reconciliation, I think, right? Like some level of healing.
Oh, yeah.
Or a large level of healing.
Oh, yeah.
Before you're able to speak about these things, especially, for some of us and for some of you out there who are listening, who want to share your story, but when you think about it and relive it, it still has a grip on you. And can you share a little bit, because I know that you've studied a lot of things, specifically NLP and self-hypnosis and things like that. So if you were coaching someone through their storytelling, through this storytelling structure, and they come to a part of themselves where they feel like it's too hard to talk about, or they still haven't reconciled, or they still feel triggered by it, what would you coach them on doing in that moment?
Yeah. And that's a really important part of standing in your resolution, standing victoriously, standing on the story versus standing in the story, which is one of my favorite speakers says. That's from Lisa Nichols. She's one of my favorite speakers. Stand on your story, not in it. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, I had therapy. I had some therapy to do, girl. So I can't do this on my own. I mean, the level of guilt and shame that I had was in my body, viscerally insurmountable. The shame of revealing that I was a bad mom in my mind, that I made bad choices, that I didn't want my family to be embarrassed. I didn't want to hurt my mom and my dad, to let them know, hey, you know what? Your daughter did drugs. In case I haven't told you yet, I should probably tell you before, you hear it from somebody else. There's some things that you may have to reconcile. And so I did see a counselor, and I did see a therapist and a hypnotist as well, because I had some emotions to get out, ranging from anger and just the full range through grief. And after I went through that, then I was able to share it with a close group of friends. I'll never forget. I was going to a seminar about storytelling. I was learning from one of the best storytellers, one of my mentors, Bo Eason. And he said, okay, when you get here, you're gonna tell your pit story. And I was like, oh, in front of strangers, I can barely tell my best friend. How am I, what? And I want to play full out. I mean, if I'm going to learn and to give and to grow so I can be better for other people, I was going to play full out, and I knew I had to figure this out. But every time I thought of going to the seminar and sharing what I'd been through, I got knots in my stomach. So I said, okay, I need to take baby steps. How am I going to do this? And the first thing I did was I shared the story with my closest group of friends. There's 5 of us. We call each other Soul Family. And they're people that I've met on this journey. They're entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, podcasters, speakers, trainers, healers. And they're my chosen family. And so I said, man, I need to share this with you guys and get some feedback. And I was in tears. I mean, ridiculous amount of tears as I was sharing it with them. And to my surprise, all I got back was love. All I got back was compassion. I'm going to cry even as I'm talking about it. Take a second just to breathe. It was just so beautiful that everything I was afraid of really was just a fear. And what they were seeing was the new version of me, because I was being created in that moment. There was a new evolution of me happening, and they were witnessing it. Mm. I was stuck in my old story. I was stuck in the Holley from, when she was 34, when she was 23 to 34 using drugs. They were seeing the new and improved version of me. And what they saw was courage and compassion and strength and trust and faith. And what they saw was that I was a good mom. And I was like, and they got to reflect that back to me. And I was like, okay, that's the first step. That's what I needed. And so I borrowed their strength. I borrowed their vision of me, if you will, to do it again and to do it again and to do it again. And what I found was every time I was able to share it, it got a little easier, and I got a lot more love, and I got a lot more healing, and so much more compassion than I ever thought possible. And instead of me being someone that was speaking from the space of speaking wide but shallow, I was going very narrow, very intimate, and very deep.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I felt that they really got me. I felt connection and what we now know and what we call in the industry is authenticity, that everyone's crying for authenticity.
Yeah.
That beautiful combination of credibility and vulnerability, and where those two come together in a beautiful marriage, is where the most beautiful expression of ourselves can be found.
I love that. I was so moved by what you just shared, because I mean, I think we've all been there where we've had those feelings of being unsupported and we live in the past. And I think that's where we, as not just women, but human beings, diminish our light and diminish the way that we show up for people. And we live into the idea and accept and buy into the idea of all of those beliefs that our own experience or conditioning solidified within ourselves. I'm not worthy. Who do I think I am?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
All of that. And what I heard from what you just shared is that while you were living in your mind in the past, everything that was before you, what you have already accomplished in your transformation, your work in your fitness business and your physical transformation, your mental transformation, your spiritual transformation, was that mentally you were still living in the past, even though you had all of these transformations. And to be able to share that with your tribe and with the women around you that you surrounded yourself with, your soul family, as you so eloquently put it, is just so, I mean, to have that mirror reflect to you your own growth and to finally accept it for yourself and say, wow, this is who I am. And at the same time, using your story and not being used by your story. That's really what I am coming to, is sharing your story in a way, like I love what you said, stand on your story, not in it, and to be used by your story and not, or whatever I just said.
You was beautiful. You said use your story, don't you be used by your story. Yeah. I'm going to have to write that down too. That was beautiful, girl.
Used by your story, because I feel like before the transformation happens in our mind, body, and spirit, we are used by our story. We are stuck in that pit, as you call it. And we let that emotional feelings that we feel resonate, and it when it's stuck in your body, it's hard to shake. Mm-hmm. And being able to share it in a way, in a supported platform where you have people who are surrounded, that you're surrounded by, who love you and care for you and really see you for who you are, is such a healing process. And I love that you shared that. Whether or not that's your therapist, that includes your therapist or a coach or whomever, I feel like just being able to speak it provides such huge healing,
and clarity
for sure. And what came forward, the other thing that came forward for me while you were sharing that, is that the clarity, the compellingness of a story, and what I'd love to hear more about what you think makes because you kind of hit on it. You said credibility and vulnerability, right?
Our key, yes.
Our key. Credibility, vulnerability equals authenticity.
Yes. Everyone's talking about, oh, you have to be authentic. And I'm like, well, what's authenticity? Like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you define it? What's the definition of authenticity? And then we hear people say, well, it means that they know you, like you, and trust you. Well, okay. Well, how do you get people to know you, like you, and trust you? Like, well, how do you do that? Like, what are the actual things, the steps that we take? And I kept looking for all these things. Like, okay, I need to be authentic. And okay, well, it's authentically me that I don't want to show up without makeup. So, okay, is that authentic? I don't know. I don't know, right? So, I mean, how do you do that? And I really discovered by accident that sharing my story, okay, check this out. This is even more powerful, at least for me it was. I hope it will be for you as well. Sharing my story with strangers gave me even more of feedback than sharing it with people I love. Now, I'm not saying don't share it with people you love, because they will give you that safe space that you need.
Yeah, share it while you're in the healing part.
Yes, exactly.
With your loved ones.
Exactly.
Creating a safe space, for sure.
Exactly. But when I started sharing it with literally strangers, and I don't mean like I'm a crazy person going up going, hey, by the way, did you know that this is what I did and this is how I found my daughter, and I was a crazy woman, but I'm fine now. I'm not talking about stopping people on the street like that, unless that's a jam. But where it's appropriate, right? Where it's appropriate, oftentimes workshops or self-development arenas or business self-development arenas, you can share your story. And the really interesting thing is I started doing this. Actually, this is how you and I met. Okay. So we are evolving. This is the first time I'm saying this, and I'm saying this right here with you right now. So check this out. I started feeling like I was getting all these friend requests on Facebook from people I had no idea who they were. And some people I would feel bad to like not say yes. And some people go, oh yeah, I really like them. I want to connect with them. And I would accept their friend and then find nothing else about them. Like I still don't know who they are. So I thought, if I have some time during the week, I'm going to reach out to certain people that I feel a connection with their mission, female entrepreneurs, business owners, women that are making a difference in the community, that want to share a powerful message. And I want to find out how I can support them and connect with them. And I was doing this through Facebook Messenger, which is how you and I met. And I started out accidentally by asking these amazing, powerful women that I knew nothing about, what's your story? Which is a very different question than tell me what you do, right? Because not often do we get a chance to talk about what we've been through, who we are, our challenges, how we've grown, how we've learned. And so when I started to ask, tell me your story, this whole other person would emerge than who I initially saw in all of their picture perfect pictures. And I got this really fast essence and this connection that made me feel like in a really short amount of time, I love this person. I know what they're about. I respect them. I honor them. I'm inspired by them. I want to be closer to them and to help them on their mission if there's some synergy. And then I would share my story. And then they would feel the same way. And it was just this really cool evolution. And then I noticed when I didn't ask, hey, tell me your story, and it was more like what you do, it was very surface and very shallow. It was wide, but not deep.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Isn't it funny that like all starving to be seen and heard, and and it just takes a shift in our own perspective, even with connecting with other people. It is a self-generated kind of experience, don't you think? And
yes.
And once to be connected to other people, we have to be connected with ourselves and be willing to open that line of communication. Because for me, I feel like I'm a very private person. So and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that too, but maybe a little bit later. but we often are afraid to share ourselves, and yet we want to be out there making an impact, doing what we do, knowing that we do it well, and being okay with the surface and sharing the surface, but knowing that if we can just get to the heart of who we are and what we're about and sharing that, we could be fully connected with other people. But I also feel like this connection is an experience that it's a state of being is what I'm getting at. State of being connected to source, to ourselves, to the world around us, to our partners and things like that. But that is a self-generated experience.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think that you can share your story without fully being connected to what happened,
Right.
what your role was, the choices that you made. So in sharing your story, and it could be a big story or a little story. It could be a little part of the story. It could be any story. It could be a story of overcoming fear. It could be a story of a challenge that you overcame in your business. It could be the story of how you got into podcasting. Anything like that, but something that has some depth to it can be a place of really cool connection with yourself, your higher source, as you said, and sharing it with others. Absolutely. Actually, another key ingredient in storytelling, and that it is credibility and vulnerability. And if I can, I just want to explain something on that for just a moment, if that would be okay.
Absolutely. Please do.
I feel like when we are not fully accepting ourselves and our past and all for the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all that stuff, we tend to want to rely more on our credibility. This is all the experience that I have. This is my education. This is the college I graduated from. These are all the letters after my name. This is how great I am. This is how qualified I am. These are the people I'm associated to, so you know how important I am. And that's credibility, which is really important. But then there's this other thing with the vulnerability. And if we're not okay with what we've been through, we tend to hide and suppress all of that because we don't know how to share it without falling apart, quite literally. And so we only focus on half of our greatness, which is the credibility. And there's this whole other half that really makes us whole and exquisite and unique and important and beautiful, that when we share that, it's like if we're not sharing that, we're only sharing half of a lotus. You only get to see half of you that's bloomed from the muck. And we all know that the lotus comes from the muck. And we all know that we all had some muck in our life somewhere.
God,
right?
You're telling me, girl.
But if we don't share this whole other side, it's like intuitively we know that person is holding back.
Yeah.
We know there's something that
and it shows up in their body language.
And it can, absolutely. Crossed arms, crossed legs, not having eye contact. And when we engage with our vulnerability and our credibility, that's when the audience engages. And one of the second things that you need for your story, you need transportation, where they feel like they're in your story because you've experienced the visual and explained the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic.
Yeah.
And all that. But they also need engagement. And the engagement really means it's defined as giving you my focused attention.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And so if you don't give me both sides of you, you don't have my attention. Right? It's like watching a beautiful train wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
My life's been a train wreck. How about yours?
Girl, I've wrecked twice, if not more. Yeah.
And so when the audience is like, yeah, I'm going to give you my attention because this is really interesting, the highs and lows, right? Peaks and valleys. Then we've got engagement. Even though maybe the audience isn't like nodding, or maybe they're not, people aren't always quoting or engaging on our social media, but they might be watching. They're watching, they're listening because you're sharing all of yourself. And maybe there's reasons why they don't want to engage. Maybe they're not ready to fully open up. Right? Yeah. But you've got to have that engagement. And the third thing you need is relevance. Is your story or what you're sharing relevant to the other people? Which, how do we make this relevant to female comedians? How do they get on stage and tell their story? And relevance means I've decided this is important to me. That's the definition of relevance. I've decided that what you're saying I can use and it's important to me. So you've got to have relevance. And then the fourth thing is influence. Influence is the fourth thing you have to have in an epic storytelling. So influence is defined as being able to change attitudes, beliefs, values, giving knowledge that changes behavior. And engagement does not equal influence. I'll say that again. Engagement does not equal influence. Just because someone's engaging doesn't mean that you can change their attitude, their belief, or behavior. Have you ever witnessed two people arguing? They're engaged. one wants to make the other one do something that the other one doesn't want to do. Right?
Yeah.
So when we have influence, we can actually create change when the other person decides to change through our storytelling.
I love it. I feel like I'm trying to download everything that you're sharing right now, because it's just so much juicy information.
I hope it's not too much.
No, I love it. It's perfect.
Okay.
There's probably people out there who have a lot of credibility, and like you said, are focused on presenting themselves through their credibility. And then there are other people who may not have the letters behind their name or a college education or whatever, that may have the vulnerability in their story. So I wonder if you could speak to both of these people. How do you create more of what you don't, or what you feel that you don't possess?
Okay, so if you're lacking.
Yeah, either you're lacking credibility and you have the vulnerability, or you're lacking vulnerability but you have, or whatever I just said. I don't remember.
Okay. I know what you said.
You know what I mean?
You got one, but you're missing the other.
Yes, you got one but missing the other. Exactly. You have the exactly.
Yeah. Ironically, I think I can answer with the same answer for both.
Perfect.
Yeah. And this was absolutely liberating when I figured this out. So the problem with people like myself who used to focus on too much credibility is they may be caught up in perfectionism. I want to look like everything is all polished and put together. I really don't want to share any of the things that aren't perfect for fear of rejection or not looking good, basically. Yeah. Those that have the story and the vulnerability, but they feel like they don't have the credibility, they too are afraid to get out there and share what they know, because someone else is going to say, well, you don't have this and that and this and that. Who do you think you are? So it's the imposter syndrome, right? Who do I think I am that I can just get up and tell my story and then I'm going to change lives? Two sides of the same coin, so to speak. Yeah. And there was an interesting study done that showed that imperfect people are really what we're looking for. Imperfect people are far more likable. We trust them and we feel like they're more authentic, right? We hear that. We have to know you, like you, and trust you. You're more authentic. And this was the study that was done. And it's called the pratfall effect. Pratfall effect. They took two women who were actresses and had them demonstrating like a juicer in a local grocery mart. One actress was flawless. She had her juices all perfect. She said the right thing at the right time. She poured her drinks. It tasted delicious. Everyone loved it. The second actress spilled her drink. She was a mess. She got some of it right. It tasted pretty good, but she didn't have all the words right. And the audience they were asked the audience to judge who was more likable, who would they buy from, who was more relatable. And the women who made mistakes got higher scores in all the categories. And what people said is she was real. I could relate. She laughed at herself. She was having a good time and she was making mistakes, but it was more interesting. And the other person was perfect. And to speak to that, I too have definitely, I don't know if you're listening, if you've ever had the experience where you felt, I don't want to do this because it's not perfect, or I don't want to do this because who do I think I am? I've been in both situations all the time. And actually it doesn't go away for me. It's still there. And when I try to remember the pratfall effect, it really, really helps me. And in fact, I did a video recently in my Facebook group, and in the background, my dog started wheezing. She's like, and I just kept talking. I'm like, okay, she'll stop pretty soon. And she sounds like she's dying. Okay. I have a 3-pound Chihuahua, and she's like, like she's got like the most massive hairball. And I tried to ignore it, and she kept doing it. And I tried to ignore it. And I had recorded this video 3 times. Okay. Like I was like, this is my perfect video, right? I was like, I don't want to stop this video. And I remembered the pratfall effect. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to call myself out on this. So I said, Okay, people. You hear that sound in the background? That's my dog. She can't breathe right now, but don't worry, she'll be okay. She does this all the time. Give her a minute, she'll be all right. And I just gave her a few minutes, gave her some pets. She was okay. And I went back to my video. But the old me would have stopped recording.
Yeah.
The old me would have stopped and started all over and probably made another mistake.
Yes.
Right. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going because this is my life. I have dogs. They do this. And so this is me. This is real. I'm just going to keep on going. I hope that helps you and inspires you. If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, my hair's not right. My makeup's not right. Or, I'm filming this thing and a big truck, blows a horn in the background or something. Address it, acknowledge it, and just keep on going.
And keep on going. Yeah. I love that. I love that idea because this is actually something that, I mean, just the idea of calling it out and being with what's happening, right? Like that's, and that's okay. Life is what life is. And it happens in the moment everywhere. It does. Especially while you're recording. Yeah, I totally get that.
Or probably on stage, right? When you're doing your gig and you're like, okay, I got this. I know exactly what I'm going to say. And then something happens and you don't remember
your person that just can't stop coughing in the back of your set. And you're just like, dude. And of course, when it's live and it's in the moment, and for me, I'm still working on crowd work, but I wouldn't even know how to handle that situation in real life.
I think we're always working on that, right? I mean, there's always something new happening.
It's always something. Let's talk a little bit about vulnerability because it comes in so many forms. I know that for me, like being pregnant right now, my body is changing and a lot of things that are confronting are coming up to the surface and floating up to the surface. But I feel like vulnerability it comes in so many forms. And I feel like as a speaker, as a performer, putting yourself out there, like stepping up on the stage is a form of vulnerability. Sharing your story, sharing that deeper, intimate thing, self-revealing thing about yourself is vulnerable. Some people might have physicality things that show up for them as vulnerability, right? So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about how to cultivate all of these aspects of vulnerability without feeling like you're giving too much of yourself away. Do you have to give all of yourself away to be vulnerable? Because this is what this is what I think about. It's like, I feel like in a lot of areas of my life, I'm completely vulnerable. I can share my story and not be triggered. And then there are other areas in my life where I'm like, I don't want to freaking go outside right now because I feel enormous.
Yeah. Even though you're radiant and beautiful, amazing and glowing. Yes.
Thank you, girl.
Yeah.
You're so kind to me. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on that because how do you cultivate that vulnerability, especially without giving too much of yourself away? Or is the idea of vulnerability giving all of yourself away?
Okay. Two things that I think of for that. One is context, which you mentioned. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to go out at all. And sometimes I feel like, I could totally bare my soul right now. So what you're talking about is context. And what context do we give how much of ourselves? And the second thing is really know your intention. So as a woman who's taking the stage, as we are, what is your intention? What is the intention behind being vulnerable? So mine is very specific. I want to encourage other women to embrace their past, release shame, guilt, or embarrassment from any choices that they've made in the past or things they've done so that they can be free, like a mermaid floating in the water, right? I want to be a mermaid.
Yeah, girl.
And so you can be free from that so you can truly stand and express your God-given gifts and talents and help other people do the same. So if I'm going to be encouraging other women to embrace their story and share their story, then I got to go first, right? So that's my intention on stage. It's my intention when I meet with business women so that they know that I'm genuine and I'm honest, who I am, and I really want to be here to help. It's also how I help my audience find me. So if there's someone that's struggling with addiction, maybe not drugs, but it could be food or social media or whatever, right? We all have that. Hello. Raise one hand if you have it. Raise two if you know you have it.
Yeah, both my hands going up and everything.
And so when we share our story with the intention of helping other people, I think that from that perspective, it will help us modulate how vulnerable to be. So there are other parts. Okay, I'm going to get a little more vulnerable right now, okay?
Okay, girl. Give it to me.
Okay, here we go.
Give it.
There are other parts of the story that I told you that I have not publicly revealed because I have not resolved it.
Interesting. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there are layers and layers and layers and layers. And there's more layers to me than what I've even shown you.
Right.
There's
layers of resolution.
Yes. I got more skeletons in the closet that I need to take care of. You know, they're all dressed up in like their cocktail dresses right now. They're like, I'm here. I'm looking good. So I have some more things I need to deal with before I can responsibly share that vulnerability. So if you're my best friend, if you're my soul family, you know what those skeletons are.
Yeah.
Right. So I've revealed it. My family knows, my closest knows. But I've really decided that by sharing those other parts of the story, I could be negatively implementing negative things to other people who are involved in the story. Right.
Yes.
So, and I don't want to hurt anybody. My intention is only to help and heal. So being really clear, this is again, being really clear about your intention. My intention is to motivate other women to share their story, resolve guilt and shame, share your message, and to help and heal. So if by going deeper into my story, I'm going to hurt someone, then I need to modulate that and deliver it when it's contextually appropriate and safe so that the other people are also protected. And I hope that there will be a time when I will be able to share all the other parts of the story. And I'm sure when I do my women's retreats in a very close VIP sort of elite group, I will share. They will get to see all of that in me.
Yeah.
Because that's the community that I want to build. I want to build a community where I can be completely 100% myself with the intention of it helping somebody else be themselves, their best and highest self. So again, going back to those two things, it's your intention. What's your intention by sharing your vulnerability? And what's the context? Is it appropriate?
Got it. Yeah. So basically, I mean, like you were saying, there are layers of resolution and you being okay with sharing that part of you, knowing that, and you'll know whether you have resolved it or not, right?
Yep.
Just by the level of how much you get triggered when you share it.
Yeah. And
for me, that's how it occurs for me.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm triggered, if I'm still triggered, like viscerally triggered by something, then I might not have healed that thing all the way through. But if I'm okay with sharing it, then I can share it and be at peace and have that experience of peace around that.
Yeah.
Sharing.
And you may still have emotion.
Right.
Like I did when I got a little teary-eyed thinking about how beautiful it was for my soul family to be there with me that night when I really first shared that story outwardly and the love that they reflected back to me. I was still very moved by it. So you may still have some emotion, but it's not the kind of emotion that you haven't resolved and you can't be with. Like I can be with the feelings, publicly of feeling the gratitude and the joy that my soul family had for me. And I feel that's only positive to share that I am so moved by it that it still brings me to tears.
Yeah.
And to show the people that that's possible for them. But if you do feel negatively triggered, where it does bring up some of the negative feelings, then maybe there's still some healing work to do there. I think that's a good thermometer.
Great. So we're coming up at the top of our time, and I know that you wanted to play a little game.
I do.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I do. I love to play.
Game and let's play.
Let's do that. Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, for being playful with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. And
do anything.
You're so fun. I love you. And okay, so the game that I want to play is kind of like a game show, right? Where I ask you a question, and I would love, if you're in the audience and you're listening, I would love for you to play along too, like think about the answers. So not only do I encourage women to share their signature story, their soul story, their journey from the pit to the pinnacle, but also to learn how to share it with powerful body language. Body language fascinates me. I love that I can go into a room and look at clusters of people talking, and I have this inside knowledge of what's happening over there. It's really cool. It's kind of like being psychic or something. So I want to share some really cool things that your audience can start using right away with themselves, as well as if you go into like a networking room, a business opportunity, if you're in a job interview or something, you can start reading body language and you will know what is happening without someone saying a word. So this is really cool. Okay, my first question is really simple. Who do you think is better at body language, men or women? Reading body language.
Oh, so you're asking me.
Uh-huh. Who do you think is better at reading body language, men or women?
I'm going to say women. I think we have a natural intuition about body language because as emotional creatures and as people, women, who are in our bodies, like I feel like I'm in my body all the time, rather than being in my mind.
Yeah.
You guys are a little bit confused by that, but I would say women. 100%
Yep.
of
Ding,
the
ding,
time.
ding. You are correct. Woo! Yay! So it was really interesting. They did a study and they found when they studied the brains of men and women while they were watching body language, they found that women, their brain lights up in 15 different areas. So that shows 15 different areas of activation when their brain is reading body language. For men, only 8 areas actually light up when they're reading body language. So ladies, when some woman is coming up and she's hitting on your man and he's like, what are you talking about? She's not hitting on me. Mm-hmm. He really can't see it. I'm telling you, he really doesn't know.
That's the truth.
That's the truth. And as women, we're like, I saw what she did. Because we know, right? And that comes from our caveman days, over 150,000 years of evolution, where men were off hunting. And as women, we had to be in these close, tight-knit groups of villagers. And the alpha female would have to give us little directions of what to do and how we socialize. So we had to learn to read body language, little subtle cues, because we were closer together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Fascinating.
Number 2. Are you ready?
Okay, number 2. Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
In a group of women who are talking, so imagine you've walked into a networking group or seminar, and there's 5 women talking. How can you tell who the alpha female is? And by the way, whenever women get together, there will be an alpha female. It'll organically happen. So which part of their bodies point to the alpha female? Is it their eyes, their heart, or their feet?
Oh, this is a hard one. I was going to say their voice, like how loud they are. But
yeah, some women do assert their alphaism through their voice. Yeah.
Well, okay, if I only have those 3 choices, I would say their eyes.
That is a really good guess. And we use our eyes to look at someone when we're speaking because culturally as women, we've been taught that that's polite, but our feet reveal the truth.
Oh, that was in the back of my head. Like, I know it's going to be there.
So what happens is we are more conscious of nodding and having our face as well as our core, right? We're facing the person that is speaking to be polite. But the parts of our body that are further away from our core, such as our fingers, hands, and feet, they reveal our unconscious thoughts. So check this out. This is really common. And even you can watch yourself. When you're talking to someone that you don't want to be talking to, begin to notice one foot will point at the person and your other foot will begin to point outward as if you're ready to make your getaway. And that again is through years of evolution. The unconscious mind is saying, part of me is in this conversation, part of me is out of the conversation, and I'm getting ready to move. Because when we were cavemen and women, when the pterodactyls, if we thought for a second that a pterodactyl was coming, we had to be on the move. We were like, okay, I need to get out of here. So we had to be ready our feet had to be ready to move. So your feet will point towards the alpha female.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. I'm going to be looking at feet everywhere.
Yeah. Not just to check out the good shoes.
Exactly.
Okay. Number 3, in a conversation, what does the alpha female influence most? The topic of the conversation, the pace at which it moves, when to laugh, or all 3?
Oh boy. I am going to say all of the above.
Yeah! Ding, 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 ding. You got it.
You didn't know I like pop quizzes, right?
I don't know. Do you like pop
quizzes? I'm 2 for 3 right now.
You're in the lead. You're in the lead. Yeah, so she will actually shift the conversation just like you're leading the conversation. And you're like, okay, well, now I want to talk about this, right? So you're leading our interview. You shift the conversation to go in whatever direction you feel is best. And then at the pace, you even said, okay, we're at the top of the hour, time to go. So you did that as well. And then even when to laugh. You'll often see women in a small group. If one laughs, it's a cue to the other women. Oh, hey, that was funny. And then they all laugh.
Yeah.
And they'll even pick up like a flick of the hair that'll be the same as the alpha woman, or even the type of laugh.
Wow.
Yeah, so the alpha female is giving cues to the other women of how to behave. It socially makes it easier for us to get along.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. All right, you're doing great. Okay, number 4. True or false? I think you'll get this one. True or false? A woman can have varying degrees of alphaism in different situations.
Definitely true.
Definitely true. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, you got it. That's true. Do you have your own experiences of this?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 women that are, in my eyes, when I'm in the room with them, because I feel like I lead with some confidence in certain situations. And then when I'm around certain women, I'm like, okay, I pull back a little bit. So yeah. I definitely feel that for sure. 100%. Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree. I have an older sister, and when we're all together, I have an older sister, younger brother. So I'm in the middle. So I can let her lead, but I can also lead because I've had a little brother. And when my sister's in the room, it's like, yep, okay, there she goes. We just let her lead. That's cool.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. Our final question. Does an alpha female, a modern alpha female, embrace her faults or hide them?
Ooh, this one's hard.
Okay. Think about what we talked today.
I can see that a modern alpha female would totally embrace. Yeah.
Yep. Ding, ding, ding. You got it. The modern alpha female embraces her faults. She knows what they are. She doesn't hide them. She, is appropriate with them. She may laugh at them. She may even point them out herself. And again, it's all kind of going back to that pratfall effect where she knows that, hey, I'm just real. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And the more I can show this, the more I know I can connect and have influence. So remember, we're talking about engagement and influence, the ability to help people change. So one of the ways that we can help people be their true selves is by us being our true self. And that can have great influence. And that is what the modern alpha woman is all about.
Hey now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That was awesome. And I love a good pop quiz. So
Me too.
I'm glad I passed that one.
Yes, you did. Flying colors.
So Holley, thank you so much. I wish we talked a little bit more about body language. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, we're at the top of our time. So maybe we can get back together and talk more about body language.
Yeah, that would be super
fun. In
fun.
the meantime, where can people find you and learn more about you, how to connect with you, all that good stuff?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. So I have 2 ways that you can connect with me. One is I do have a Facebook group called Leading Six-Figure Speakers, and 6 is SIX. So if that resonates with you and you'd love to check it out, we talk about storytelling, we talk about body language, and I'm in there once a week doing some videos. You'll see the video of my dog going, You can see that one too. So if that interests you, check it out. And the other way is I really want to give a gift to anyone in your audience that feels moved by what we've talked about today. If you feel like you have a story, if you feel like you don't know if you have a story, you're not sure, but maybe you feel like you do, or if you know, oh yeah, I definitely have a story, and you want some support around it, I would like to offer anyone in your audience an opportunity to speak with me directly. And we'll have a link hopefully in the show notes or somewhere, but I would like you to go to my name, which is Holley Mignosi, Holley. My last name is MIG, N as in Nancy, OSI.com/my story. And you can actually have some time with me. I only have a few spots because obviously I don't have all the time in the week, but I have set aside some time each week to speak with you and to see if we can figure out what your soul story is, what your signature story is, and take the next step with you on that journey. That would be really awesome.
Very cool. Thank you for that. And thank you for the free gift. I will have it in the show notes. And thanks for listening, guys. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this conversation because I know I did. And I can't wait to bring more valuable information to you guys. Thank you and have a great day. Thanks, Holley.
Thank you so much, Linda. It was such an honor to be here. I had a great time.
Awesome. Friends, you love comedy and you love being empowered. That's why you listen to this podcast. But we know what you don't love. Paying a ton of money for tickets to a comedy show and those pesky 2-drink minimums most clubs have nowadays. Well, I've got some good news for you. Stand Up New York has launched the Laugh Pass. It's a new way for comedy fans to get a VIP experience for less than the price of a typical night out at a club. And get this, they're expanding to clubs all around the country. So check out getlaughpass.com for the full list of clubs in the Laugh Pass network. And Laugh Pass holders get unlimited access to comedy shows, plus some amazing perks, such as a free ticket to bring a friend, VIP seating, advanced notification when big name comics are scheduled to perform, and a bottle of wine on your birthday week. What? The pass is normally $159, but it's been discounted for fans of our show to $139, and that's like $10 a month. Dude, that's insane. So get yourself over to standupny.com/laughpass or getlaughpass.com and get yourself a true comedy fan VIP experience. And make sure you enter the coupon code SHESHED so you can get that discount and I can collect my commission. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, it's Linda again. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please come by and show your love on one of our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And if you want to download our RSS feed, you can do so right on iTunes. Thanks again, and I look forward to sharing more content with you. Take care. Bye.
She Shed Comedy. Like us, follow us, share us. Tune in next time.